Hey everyone, welcome to the INOCON session on the art of the deal. My name is Jacob Lapidus. I'm a student in the Global Entertainment and Music Business program, and I'm currently serving as label manager of Disruption Records, Berkeley Valencia's independent label. Joining us today is Marty Frascogna, an entertainment attorney from the US with over 13 years of experience practicing at the intersection of international and entertainment law. Hopefully by the end of this session, you'll have learned a bit about the variety of deals that exist in today's industry and have a better understanding of how to protect your rights and make the most out of your relationship with any label. Thank you and enjoy the session.
But it's good to see you again. I loved seeing everybody in January when I was on the Valencia campus. Always a pleasure to be at anything Berkeley related. So thank you for having me today.
To get into our main conversation, just to begin by giving us a bit of context, would you mind walking us through what a typical day in the life or what throughout the week you might be touching in terms of the work that you're doing, the types of artists that you work with, and the types of labels that they're typically working with as well?
Yeah, so sometimes the easiest way to explain like what an entertainment attorney does, everybody assumes it's you bring an attorney on when there's some sort of hornet's nest of problems. And ideally, that's the worst case scenario for me. I don't want to jump on. It's not the right creative energy. You want to be working with someone. So in a kind of a total sense, what an attorney would do, and it kind of leads to my day-to-day activity, is we're air traffic control. I mean, when you have an established artist, and I'm using someone you just hear on the radio, the traditional team members are going to be management, a booking agent, a publicist, a label, business manager. The attorney is kind of the one that knows where everyone can and can't fly because we're the only ones that have seen the total picture. We look at every piece of paper, every contract or pass through the, I guess, the client or the artist kind of progression of their career, just like any dollar would filter through the business manager. So my day is really communicating with the entire group of people, telling them what they can and can't do. Sometimes that's communicating with the artist a lot. Sometimes that's communicating with management a lot. But you're guiding based upon the stack of paperwork that continues to mount. It's not one agreement you're looking at that day. It's based on connections of agreements that the artist would have signed 2 years, previous to that, and a year previous to that, and then what you're doing within the management relationships and contracts and so forth. So a lot of my day becomes very reactionary. It is based upon the season. So sometimes it's very artist heavy, kind of look at your diverse portfolio of people you would work with. And at this point, the artists that I would work with, most of them are signed with major labels. So there's a lot of team members. But that wasn't always the case. When I first started, that was definitely not my norm of clients at that time. But there's a signing season for labels. So sometimes you're working on more record deals and you're working on more stuff with the actual client. For my label clients or publishing clients, there's a signing season there as well. And when they're reviewing it and when they're getting contracts ready, when it's festival season and tour season, I know exactly what I'm working on. So you can kind of predict the flow. There's an ebb and a flow. It always changes. Sometimes it's label, sometimes it's publishing, sometimes it's artist.
Wow, that sounds like you guys are juggling a lot over there.
Well, it's fun sometimes, but yes, it's a juggling job because most of what you have to do is just communicate. And for me, I like to try to communicate clearly and kind of non-legal terms, if you will, because look, the legal minutia is a pain. You don't really enjoy looking at a 90-page agreement and then trying to explain a 90-page agreement in legal terms to a 22-year-old artist. You have to figure out the way that it's going to connect with them and that they can communicate that to their team. But it is a very fun job. I definitely enjoy being an entertainment attorney.
That's a really interesting point, Marty. Sort of going off of that, how do you typically find your clients, or do they typically find you? Like, where did that relationship really begin? Yeah,
so, I mean, I've been practicing law 12, 13 years, I believe. So, my first year and a half of practice is totally different than where I'm at now. So you're trying to hustle and get clients, just like a manager is trying to hustle and get clients early in their career. So I guess from the legal point of view, once you have your roster of clients and you do good work, you're doing good work with the artists that are then friends with other artists, it becomes a referral game. And if you're doing good work for that particular artist and a label signing someone, and they realize that person does not have legal counsel, typically a label will give a list of 10, 15 people that they would suggest that particular client interview. So we're not aligned with the labels, but it's based upon a history of good work, and they know how people would operate. So it's very much a referral game. I mean, as you know, if an artist is doing quite well, an up-and-coming artist wants the exact same manager. They want the exact same attorney. They want the exact same label. So they check credits. I mean, a lot of people laugh. They're like, the hell are credits for now? I'm like, well, actually, I probably get a lot of referrals because of credits. So when I'm listed as legal counsel and an artist is doing quite well, I usually get a call saying, hey, I see you represent so-and-so. Are you know, would you consider working with us? So at this point in my career, it's very much a referral game.
What types of deals have you seen, and what variety have you seen between the majors, indies, and maybe some of the weirder, non-traditional ones that artists might not be considering?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I can tell you, I feel like I've seen all sorts of different things. And I think most people, when they think of a record deal, they immediately go to, I would say, what is the traditional artist royalty deal. Making up a label, plug in anybody here, but say Universal signs an artist and they're going to give them a 16% royalty. Okay. That's usually where everybody's brain goes. I want to do a major label deal. It's going to be a very small royalty rate. Kind of the unknown factors that would also go into that is, why is Universal even giving this person a particular deal? Were they turned on by, you know, a heavy YouTube product that they're putting out there, really good video? So at that point, you also have some different components that come in, where do they want a back catalog of material, or are they just signing me moving forward? And that rate is at 16%, and very relevant, because it starts to tell the artist where their income stream is going to be coming from and what are they completely chopping up. So I think that's where everybody's brain immediately goes with, okay, here's a record deal. And then the next tier is people would say, well, I don't want to do that. So I guess I just want to be with an indie. And I usually warn artists, look, I have no problem with independent labels. I have no problem with major labels. But independent labels usually get their structure from major labels. So although they're indie, which means, okay, they may not have as many employees, they may not have as deep of pockets, the general deal looks the same. So it's like, doesn't matter if you're working with Universal or independent label XYZ, they tend to look the same. So once you start to scale from that, you start to look at a variety of different deals, like a net profit deal. And a lot of major labels do this. A lot of independents do this as well, where, hey, we want to invest in you, but we're going to do little on the artist development side. We see you're already doing things well. We essentially want to partner, and you know, it will be a 50-50 split. So we'll retain 50%, you will retain 50%. Now, it's really good in theory, and sometimes it plays out exactly like that. But what I would have to start alerting artists to is, look, there's a whole lot of deductions before you get to the actual 50% that you're going to receive. So number one, if they pump in anything, it's going to get recouped first. And it's usually, hey, this is great. We'll spend a marketing budget of $250,000 on you. Guess what? They're going to recoup the marketing budget before you actually see any revenue coming your way. In addition to that, they'll start to have deductions where you can get into the absurdities of it, where there's going to be, you know, packaging deductions before the 50% is calculated, or holdback deductions before the 50% is calculated. So sometimes when you really look at the net number, you're almost back to a traditional artist royalty deal, where it's like, well, 50% looks good, but you start to look at all the relevant deductions and you may be hovering around 15%, where it's less than it was before. So you do see a lot of that. I don't mean to come with the absolute scare tactic on it. Not all of them are structured like that, but that is a point of awareness. You see a lot of licensing deals now where somebody actually may have a pretty good catalog. They don't want to enter into one of these traditional deals or a 50% profit deal. So they will license the product to a label for a duration of time. And it may be set at 5 years, 10 years. That varies, and it varies on the type of label as well. But after it's released, it reverts back to the artist, and they will kind of come up with a shared tier of, here's what the artist will generate during that time. See a lot of EP and single deals. I'd say that's kind of very unique of what I'm seeing now. The label will remain nameless, but I had somebody years ago where they were asked to sign an EP singles deal with a label, but the label did not want any affiliation with the artist whatsoever. This particular label offered a client of mine and said they wanted to fund an EP in a series of singles, but under no circumstances could the client affiliate with that label. And I remember thinking, this is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. But what they wanted to do, they wanted this person to continue to look independent, but they were giving them deeper pockets in order to do higher end production and higher end marketing. And if the project popped, all of a sudden they were going to swoop in and exercise their option, which that was part of the deal. Hey, if you put this out and we deem that this is going well, now you're under contract with us. Now, if the project was an absolute dumpster fire, they didn't want any affiliation with it because it would have deteriorated their roster and their image. So you do see a lot of unique EP single deals where they're not really ready to do something all in. They're just kind of dipping their toe into the water and reacting, seeing how things are going to react with the team or the artists themselves. Last, I do see a lot of non-traditional deals, which a lot of people just kind of scratch their head and go, I've never even heard of that. Maybe the easiest non-traditional label to reference is Red Bull. Essentially, they're a legitimate record label, but there is a much larger product attached to it. They're not necessarily, hey, we're trying to build up the record label. They're trying to build up Red Bull, the brand. And you just look at content that they put out on their YouTube channel, and I think they have, I'm not looking at it right now, but I feel like they've got like 100 million subscribers. It's something absurd. And you look at videos that have been viewed, it is in the hundreds of millions, but they are trying to elevate the core brand at the end of the day, which is Red Bull. So you'll have all these non-traditional labels that they really look at music like it's a marketing extension of what they're doing. So if they hook into the right people, they hook into the right artists that have the right kind of core concepts that is aligned with their brand, it ultimately feeds back to the core brand and helps elevate that. So, a lot of people don't even know those are out there. There's several non-traditional labels, Red Bull just kind of being the prime example.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of, it's a new world out there, and there's a lot for artists to consider when they're approaching or being approached by a record company or with a new artist. Are there any types of tips, tricks, questions that you like to ask or strategies you use to actually understand or help them understand sort of what type of deal is right for them?
For an artist or for an attorney, the things I'm going to start asking is I'm going to start to review the assets, because when I'm talking about the assets, what are you doing right now? So for example, if you've put out 20 masters, 10 masters, the number does not matter. They've got to understand there's so many things connected with that particular master. So if the dream is, hey, I want to sign with Atlantic, that leads me down the path of, okay, in a basic sense, have you already filed for the copyrights on these masters? If the answer is yes, okay, great. You were organized in that sense. Okay, did you work in a recording studio? You did. Great. Okay, where's the agreement that shows what you pay that studio, or who is the producer that worked on this? What is the producer rate that you paid? What is the work for hire agreement that goes into this? Were there other musicians on this particular project? Were there other writers on this project? Who gets what royalty stream? You start going deep. And if all of those things, they fail to exist, that's a normal sense with an independent artist. But now I know what we have to start building. And if they don't have it, but they're telling me, hey, I really want you to pitch me to Atlantic, I can't pitch you to Atlantic, because the first thing Atlantic's going to want to see is, okay, we're interested in this back catalog. Let me see how you've secured all the assets. Now, if you don't have those things in order, it's kind of a weak presentation, because all of a sudden Atlantic's going to think, I like them, but they're not really set yet. They don't have everything in order. So start to, evaluate what is it that you have released. And then you look at the deep layers of paperwork that really secure what you've done. And then on top of it, I told you this on campus at Berkeley, I am an advocate for, if you are using a mark in any sense, you better own that trademark. And usually I hear people say, well, I got the domain name. That's irrelevant. I mean, I guess it's relevant in the sense, cool, you secured it in address. But if you were working under a name, let's just say my band name is Band Frascogna, okay? And I'm putting out material on everything. Band Frascogna, I've got merch, I've got the domain name, I've got all this stuff. And I haven't formally secured the trademark for it. I continue to pump energy and money into building up my brand. And then all of a sudden somebody can go, well, that's a cool name. I think I'm going to jump in and do that too. Well, I can't stop them. They can put out their own merch that says Band Frascogna. They can do whatever they want to. You go through the process of actually securing it. Now you use it as a weapon in the field. You can go after people and shut them down if they're using it without your authorization. You can tell people, hey, I don't mind if you use it, but here's how you're going to use it, and here's the licensing fee that I'm going to charge you. It's a total different game. So to assess the assets as an artist, same thing an attorney is going to do. What are you putting out? What's successful? Are you putting out YouTube videos? Cool. Do you have an agreement with the videographer? Do you have a work for hire agreement with them? Because these are things that a label is going to ask you if ultimately your plan is, I want to sign with a major label. If you don't, these are still general business things that you need in order to get royalties the way that you rightfully should, and to secure the relationships of all the people that are working on the project as well.
There was one other question I wanted to ask you before we concluded, which was about one of the less maybe visible or tangible variables that you might come across in these negotiations, which is the personalities. Do you have any examples of times when the personalities in the room actually made or broke the negotiation?
Oh, I have an infinite number of examples, but just to pull one, it's almost difficult. So maybe let me articulate the problem and points of awareness. So to me, there is a formula that plays in every negotiation, but you see it more so in music because there's so many people involved in a deal. So for example, Atlantic, I don't know why I keep using them as an example. Say Atlantic wants to sign your particular client. Atlantic already got situations there. There's an A&R person that's identified the talent. There's going to be senior A&R above them that likely that junior A&R has to pitch to. For that particular client or artist, they're going to bring their own expectations and personalities into the equation. They're likely going to have a manager. There's going to be an attorney involved. There's going to be a booking agent involved. There's all these entities. So when you start to look at how that whole negotiation is going to flow, okay, the things that I would tell anybody, you have to control these elements or have an awareness of these elements. Personalities are number one, because if you've got somebody that is an absolute asshole in that situation that is going to come in and swing the hammer when everybody else has a passive approach to it, because most of the time an artist just they sit back and say, look, I need my lawyer to handle this, or my manager to handle this. And that's no disrespect to an artist. They need to create. They don't want to be in the nuts and bolts of this. So you've got a passive artist, and you've got A&R on the other end that's swinging a hammer. And then you may have a manager in the mix that can't stand the attorney. You've got a recipe of things you have to assess to properly navigate that particular negotiation. On top of it, the number of people involved is something you should assess. So look, if you're dealing with 2 people in a negotiation, that's an easier thing to do as opposed to now you got 6 people, 6 different personalities that you've got to start to navigate through that as well. Uncertainty is a big component in addition to time. Everybody's got a different shot clock, so to speak, of what they're trying to close out, and it connects to the personalities. It kind of connects to the level of uncertainty. So, for example, one of the things we discussed when I was on campus was, say you're a manager that you've been hustling with this artist for 5 years and you've really made nothing, but now you're seeing this opportunity that, hey, this artist could get signed. Here's my payday. Oh my gosh, I've got rent due in August and I need this deal closed ASAP. Or you could be the lawyer that's looking at it going, man, I've represented this person and our engagement letter is up. I need this thing to close immediately, otherwise they may drop me. You've got all of these components and time components that are really challenging to navigate. So you start to look at those and sanction elements of, and then just one of the last things we kind of discussed is the circumstances and the power of that particular circumstances. Everybody's going to have a different stressor at the end of the day. And these are all things kind of go into this negotiation formula that you can't just go, hey, here's my style. I'm a bulldog. I'm going to come in. I'm going to get after everybody. Good luck. I mean, absolutely good luck. You have to look at all the assets that we talked about earlier. What are you even playing with in this poker game? How big is your stack of chips that you get to bring to the table and start dealing? So all of those things go into that negotiation formula.
That's an amazing point. And we'll have that, we'll pull that up as you're talking through that as well, because I think that'll be kind of like the perfect, or if
that would
you
probably
prefer.
Help.
Yeah,
no, that would probably a good visual of what I said. Mm-hmm. And it's a confusing formula unless you kind of connect it to what we just discussed, because I know we discussed this when I was there in January and February.
Yeah, that was amazing, Marty. That's a perfect, I think, summation of the key factors that any artist, regardless of the team members or sort of the development stage, the people across the table from them, can keep in mind when they come to the table in a negotiation.
Yeah,
and
good. I'm glad it was
absolutely
helpful in some sense. Yeah. I guess my only parting words, if you're asking, and apparently you're not,
of course.
Kind of chime in. If you could do one thing above anything else as an independent artist, when you stop to look at, we talked about understanding your assets, getting things like your copyrights filed, your trademarks filed. There's levels of importance to all this stuff, but above all, get organized. Just get organized, because if you have hopes of signing a label deal, independent or major, when you present to a label, it's not, hey, here's my music. It's not just that. They want to see, okay, there's all the relevant agreements in place, all the relevant filings have taken place. You've got management agreements, or you've got agreements with your lawyer. They're not only investing in you as an artist, really investing in the entire team. And I can tell you, I've seen things go south because a label may love that particular artist, but people on their team they've dealt with in the past and they can't stand them. So they'll pass on that artist. So an artist just needs to get organized. I mean, get all of it intact. That's not just, hey, here are the masters I've released and here's the folder on my computer that's got it. No, every time you put a master out, any project out, video project, you've got to look at all the stuff that goes with it, because that will come into play as you continue to progress as an artist.
Yeah, wise words. We really appreciate the advice, Marty, and we appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, guys. As always, I love doing anything with Berkeley, so I can't wait to be back on campus.
Awesome. And thank you again to Marty, and thank you to the whole INOCON team, as well as the Disruption team who are helping to make this whole session possible.